Thank you so much. It's been too long. And when I got the appointment, I was so happy. And then when I heard your lockdown, I thought, hey, what's going to happen now? But the Lord is amazing. You know, as I sat down deciding what I was going to preach about the Sabbath, I sat down and I thought to myself, as a result of our dear friend Corona, and I say it with the apostrophes, my dear friend Corona, so many things have changed this year. I'm not standing in front of you as a church to preach. We can't meet, we can't travel, we can't work. All around us is difficult times. I thought about how Easter weekend and camp meeting had changed. It was done virtually, and I'm so thankful for virtual. And as I thought about camp meeting, you know how it is when you get a flood of the most amazing memories. When we slept in a tent, when we slept in a caravan, when it rained, I thought of all the amazing sermons I heard. I thought of the fellowship we had shared with our fellow campers. And finally, we had a tradition of hot cross buns on a Friday morning covered in fresh butter. And as I thought about Easter and I thought about hot cross buns, I thought about crosses. And in my mind's eye, I could clearly see the scenes of the Passion playing out before me. And I tried to imagine the pain that Jesus experienced and how he managed to deal with it. He was whipped, he was cursed, he was spat on, the crown of thorns. He carried that heavy cross up to Golgotha. He had nails beaten through his hand and feet, and he had the tormenting people teasing him while he was on that cross. He had the knowledge that his disciples had deserted him. And as I thought about it, I stood in awe and wondered how he coped with the pain, the physical pain, the emotional pain, and the relational pain. And as I thought about the example of Jesus, I began to think of other people in the Bible. I thought of Job, sitting on that rubbish heap covered in sores, lost his children, he lost everything he possessed, and all he had was a wife who said, curse God and die. I thought of Isaiah, I thought of Peter, I thought of John being boiled in oil, and so many more that overcame suffering and pain, and this morning's sermon seemed to form in my mind. And I entitled it, How to Handle Life's Hurts, God's Way. I know that I might be sounding a bit insensitive, especially if you're in a place where it seems that life has you in a vice, where it is so especially relevant in the world that we're living in today with Corona. As Elders said, people are starving out there, but we have a job to do. But what I really want to do is to share with you, each one of you, a formula, God's formula, which I've discovered in the book of Psalms, which I think should be entitled God's Do's and Don'ts to Handle Life's Hurts. Somebody once said that there are more questions than answers, and I wish to start by asking one. How do you handle life when life gets tough? The fact is, life is not all fun and games. We all have problems. We all have difficulties. Jesus warns us, in this world, you will have tribulation. And I bet if I had to ask you for a show of hands, which I can't see because all I just see is little dots with the name underneath it, I'm sure that you would all agree with me. Life is full of problems. There's no one exempt. We've been around the block enough times to know that life is full of ups and downs. Life has its good times and its bad times. And it just seems that the bad times come around more often than the good times. Many of us have gone from one problem, one pain, one heartache, or one crisis into another. It just seems that it never ends. The real problem, however, is not what we face or what we go through, But at the end of the day, it's the attitude, the way in which we handle life's problems. But before we can get to the solutions, perhaps we need to identify the problem. How are we as people hurt? How do we hurt people? How are people hurting us? Basically, there are three ways. Firstly, we hurt physically. We have our cuts, our scratches, our bumps, our bruises, our broken bones, which may not compare to the suffering of Jesus on the cross. But some of us also live in constant pain from arthritis, rheumatism, breathing ailments, and as it is a real hurt to be living in continual pain. Standing at the door when I stand and I greet people after a sermon, I'm aware that people are scared to give you their hands because of the pain. Secondly, we hurt emotionally. This is a little bit more hidden, but it's often harder to deal with than a physical pain. How do you deal with emotional hurts? How do you deal with fear? The fear of the unknown, fear of not being able to get money for your family, worry, anger, guilt, grief, depression. How do you get relief from these things? And what about hurting relationally? The most difficult type of hurt to deal with is the hurt that is caused by other people. People that we normally love and know, family, friends, church members. It's a fact of life. You'll be hurt by other people, and you need to learn how to deal with it. Sometimes it's misunderstandings, sometimes it's conflict, sometimes it's loneliness, and sometimes rejection, and sometimes it's criticism. How do you deal with the hurts other people inflict on our lives? When we talk about hurts, I always naturally go to the book of Psalms. The book of Psalms contains just about every emotion that could be felt or expressed. David is one of those guys that seems to spill his guts. He just lays it all out there and he says, "This is the way I feel." In this passage we're going to look at this morning, I want you to see 6 ways to handle hurts that don't work. Take note, that don't work. Then I want you to see what does work. The reason I want us to look at David as a model for ways that don't work is because they are the 6 most common ways that we, me, you, the world deal with hurt. David would teach us out of the book of Psalms. In Psalm 34, verse 18, he writes, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those that are crushed in the spirit." David is saying here, you are never closer to God than when you are hurting. David knew this from personal experience. It's the bottom line. God is close when I'm hurting. So what do I need to do? The 6 remedies for hurt that don't work. Number 1, ignore it. Don't ignore your hurts. I call this the Clint Eastwood approach, the cowboy style to pain. It's the macho approach. I am tough. I'm going to grin and bear it. Give me a bullet to chew on. I'm going to ignore it, out of sight, out of mind. If I just ignore it, maybe it will go away. I will just suffer in silence. But Psalm 32 verse 3 says, "There was a time I wouldn't admit my sin, but my dishonesty made me miserable and filled my days with frustration." Ask yourself this question: what am I pretending not to know? What hurt am I simply trying to ignore? We often pretend that everything is kosher, everything is right, everything is hunky-dory, when we know that everything is not. Some of the parents that I know have children on drugs and they're just not even seeing it. Some of us are letting our marriages die and we're pretending that it's not happening. Everything is fine. Maybe some of us are not making it at work. Things are not going well as we should be, and we're pretending that everything is okay. So why do we pretend? Because we think if I can just ignore it, maybe it'll go away. Yet David says, when I don't admit my hurt, when I don't admit it, when I don't admit where I've blown it, when I don't admit my sin, all that it does, it makes me miserable and it frustrates me. So how do you know that when you're trying to ignore a problem? How do you know when you're trying to ignore the problem? Firstly, you procrastinate. You start saying things like, one of these days, women will tell you about their husbands when they ask for something to be fixed. I will do it one day. I'm going to take care of this problem. One of these days, I'm going to get right with God. One of these days, I'm going to get some marriage counseling, drug counseling. One of these days. We always postpone what is painful. It's a fact of life. We try to ignore it by postponing it. Yet notice what happens. He says it makes me miserable and frustrated because denying a hurt never heals it. It only makes it worse. Procrastination tends to turn minor problems into major problems. Postponing pain never solves the pain or the problem. Secondly, we like to fall back on the old saying, and I don't know whoever made that saying up. We say time heals everything. But I think the person who invented that phrase never sat in a doctor's office. Time does not heal everything. Sometimes you need a procedure. Sometimes you need an operation. Time often festers the problem. It makes it worse. It becomes infected. Some of you may have had problems for 30 years and you're still thinking about it. Time does not heal everything, so don't ignore it. My second point for the morning is we run away from it. David said, I've learned my lesson. I don't run from it anymore. He says, I tried that. In the first way, it was the cowboy approach. The second one I'm going to call Roadrunner. The chicken-hearted run from it. They leave it. They get out. They escape. They retreat. They back off. And I'm not going to stay around. Psalm 55, verse 6 and 8 says, I wish I had wings like a dove. I would fly away and find some rest. I would flee to some refuge from all of this storm. How many of you feel that way? Have felt that way? How many of you mothers of preschoolers, especially with this lockdown and no school, have felt like that? It is a human nature to run from difficulty. It's a fact of life. Did you know that by law, every public building, the outside door, the exit doors have to swing out? Why? Because when people, they panic, they run, they try to escape. There are many ways to escape today. Some people take drugs, some get drunk. We are experts at escaping. We think of many, many ways to escape. We try to escape by doing things that give us excitement and thrills. And I call this the Disneyland approach. We will wait for 2 hours for a 30-second ride. And the thing that bugs me is when you get off, you're exactly in the same place you started. You made no progress at all. That's the problem with the kicks and escapes. You can escape it, but when you come back, you're still there at the same place with the hurt and the problem. You never solve a problem by running away from it. In fact, if you do, you will just have to face it again and again and again because God wants you to grow. And if you don't grow in a particular situation, God will give you another opportunity to correct the problem. When you come back, you'll face reality. Remember Abraham? Every time he got into a place, he said, no, it's not my wife, it's my sister. And he had to learn the lesson. Sooner or later, we'll have to face and properly deal with our sins and other problems that hinder our relationship with God and others. David says, don't ignore it. He says, I've learned from experience that you don't run away from hurt. And thirdly, he says, we normally try to hide it. This is a person who says, I'm not going to ignore it. I'm not going to run from it. I'm just going to tell everybody nothing about it. I'm going to wear a mask. We're good at masquerade parties. People, you say to them, how are you today? No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Psalm 32, verse 2 to 3 says, I kept quiet, not saying a word, but my suffering only grew worse. I was overcome with anxiety, and the more I thought, the more troubled I became. We don't want to admit that we have problems. We'd rather hide it from everyone and continue just to be miserable. We don't like to admit when we have sin, we have a problem or a hurt. We hide it, we wear a mask, and the problem is that God knows everything there is to know about all of us. We can hide nothing from God. Why don't we just admit it and call on God for help? Many of us have become good at disguising our hurt. We disguise it with nice clothes, nice cars. Many of us think if we could just get a certain thing, I'll be happy. I've been waiting for so long for somebody to get me a Ferrari for Christmas. Then life would be great if I could just save up enough money to take that vacation, that overseas trip, whatever it may be. If I could just remodel the house, if I could just buy something, the purchase of happiness, then everything would be great. But the fact is, possessions never compensate for pain, for problems. I know a lot of people who have everything in life and they're still hurting very, very deeply. Hiding a hurt only intensifies it. David says, as a result of hiding it, he was overcome with anxiety. He became more troubled. We need to be committed to openness, honesty, and unconditional acceptance, because the fact is we all have pain and problems. James 5 verse 16 says, confess your faults. Revealing your feelings is the beginning of healing. You can never work on a fault until you first admit it to yourself, to God, to other people. Revealing your feelings takes it out of the closet. Revealing your feelings is the beginning of healing. How many times have I had people come to me and say, Mark, I never told this to anybody. And I know that we're about to experience a breakthrough in that person's life, because telling it to somebody else, whether it's me or somebody else, is the release that they sometimes need to get on with life. David would say, don't ignore it. Don't run away from it. And don't even try to hide it. Number 4, worry about it. Man, worry is something we all do so well. Who can say they don't worry about life at this time of the corona? We love to stew and fret and spew and get uptight. We become anxious. Worrying is an attempt to control something that is totally uncontrollable. It's playing God. It's assuming responsibility God never meant us to have. That's worry. When I worry about something, it never solves anything. Can you add a minute on your life by worry? To worry about something I can't change is useless. To worry about something I can change is dumb, because I should just change it. So I ought to go and change it, invest the time in changing rather simply by worrying about it. Psalm 55 says, verse 2 says, I am worn out by my worries. Psalm 77 says, I'm so worried I cannot speak. And Psalm 37 verse 8 says, don't give in to worry or anger. It only leads to trouble. And who wants trouble? Worry is like a rocking chair, my grandpa always said. You rock backwards and forwards, but you never make any progress. It doesn't solve anything. Don't worry about your problems. Work on your problems. Pray about your problems. If we spent as much praying about our problems as we worry, we'd have far less to worry about it. My wife likes that saying, why worry when you can pray? You know that little song, Why Worry? You know that one. It's so important. Have you noticed that when you worry about something, it increases the size of the problem dramatically? If somebody criticizes you, then the more you rehearse it in your mind, the bigger and bigger it gets until pretty soon the whole world is against you. Worry does not work. Don't run from a hurt. Don't hide your hurt. Don't ignore your hurt. Don't worry about a hurt. You've got two options. Rehearse it, release it, rehearse it or release it. The more you rehearse it, a problem gets bigger and bigger, but release it. That's the answer. Point number 5 this morning, resent your hurt. You give in to self-pity and you resent it. Poor me. What did God let me get into now? What did I get myself into? What did my friends, my family? And in the end, we have a pity party. David discovered that resentment does not work either. Psalm 73, verse 21 and 22 says, when my thoughts were bitter and my feelings were hurt, I did not understand you. He says here, I don't understand the situation I find myself. I don't understand what God's doing. What am I doing? I don't understand anything because the resentment in me has clouded my mind. There is one thing more harmful than hurt, whatever it is, it's resentment. Regardless of where you are hurting, there's one thing more harmful than hurt. It's becoming resentful about that hurt. Resentment is much, much worse than anything you've ever hurt over. If you become resentful, it becomes a poison in your body that prolongs the hurt and clouds the issue that keeps you from having joy. And we're supposed to have a life full of joy. The past can't hurt you unless you let it, unless you allow it to hurt you. Resentment will never change what happened. It happened. Get over it. It's dead. It's finished. You don't change the past with resentment. You only ruin your future. Let it go. The past is the past and nothing is going to change it. Not all the resentment in the world will do that. One of the facts of life is that as long as I'm fixing the blame, fix it on somebody else, fix it on anybody else, but I don't fix the problem. We spend our energy in one or other form. We can either fix the blame or we can fix the problem. I used to do conflict management from marriages to work people. And you know, instead of turning our energy against each other, it's time for us to turn our energy together against the problem and work on it in that way. You'll be bitter or you'll be better. It's your choice. Many of you are allowing people in your past to continue to hurt you in the present, and that just does not make sense. Somebody borrowed money from me, never gave it back, and every time I thought of this person, I had the feeling of, well, you can't believe it, resentment. And one day I woke up and I'd been praying, and the Lord said to me, give it away. I phoned the man up and I said, excuse me, I can't live with it anymore. I'm giving you the money as a present. And after that, it wasn't my problem anymore. David says, when my thoughts were bitter and my feelings were hurt, I did not understand you. I withdrew into a shell and protected myself, and I made myself miserable. We usually try these first 5 things, and then we decide that none of these are working. Running from it doesn't work, hiding it doesn't work, ignoring it doesn't work, worrying about it doesn't work, resenting it doesn't work, and we naturally assume that there's only one alternative left, and that is we want to throw in the towel. We just want to give up. And David says, I tried that and it doesn't work either. Don't give up. Maybe this is the stage that you're in today. Maybe you've been carrying a hurt for a long time. Maybe the pressures of life around you are crunching you, pushing you down. Maybe you've been carrying the problems and you've come to the conclusion, what is the use? Why even try? I'm at the end of my rope. I want to throw in the towel. I want to call it quits. I feel like Humpty Dumpty that fell off the wall and nothing can put me back together again. It's over. I've tried too long and my life is out of control. I'm going to give up. And you know what? David knew exactly how you feel. He knew what it was like to hit rock bottom. In Psalm 131 and 2, it says, from the depths of my despair, I call to you, Lord, hear my cry. Lord, listen to my call for help. All of us at one time or another have ignored our problems. We've run from our problems. We've hidden problems. We've worried about our problems. We've resented our problems. You may be here this morning still doing these things and perhaps on the verge of giving up. Let me encourage you to stop ignoring your problems. Stop running away and never give up. Have you ever been in a relay race where you've got to fill up the water, Pathfinder days, and you've got to walk backwards and forwards with that full cup, and you've got to take water in this full cup. And the more you walk backwards and forwards, you keep on spilling the water, and the one who's got the most water is the winner. If you fill that glass up to the brim, you jiggle it slightly, it all spills out because it's so full. Some of us here this morning are so full of hurt, problems. Any little stress deviates you, it unnerves you. Any little thing can tick you off. You've got so much hurt in our life right now, pain and problems that we are filled up to the brim. And any slight thing that goes wrong in our life can spill it all over. And you come apart. You don't show it outwardly, you do it inwardly. So what do? If you don't ignore your problems, you don't run from it, you don't hide it, you don't worry about it, you don't resent it, you don't give it up, what on earth will work? And then David brings us this beautiful solution, the ultimate solution found in Psalm 142, 2 and 3. I bring God all my complaints. I tell him all my troubles. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and with my voice unto the Lord did I make my supplication. I poured out my complaints before him. I showed him my troubles. And when I'm ready to give up, he knows what I should do. He says, instead of giving up, give it over to me. The first step is to give my hurts to God. He's the only one who can do anything about it in the first place. I definitely can't. David says, when I'm ready to give up, when I'm ready to throw in the towel, I bring God all my complaints, and he knows exactly what to do. When you feel powerless to change a situation, look to a power beyond yourself. Look at the greatest power. God is greater than your problems. Jesus Christ said, when you know the truth will set you free. Free from hurt, free from pain. If you want to be free from discouragement, turn it over to the Lord Jesus Christ. I want you to know that there is hope for all of those who call upon the Lord. Each of you that are here this morning should realize it's not by accident. God brought each one of us there for a purpose. He brought you here to say to you, don't give up. Don't give up. Rather, turn it all over to me. Maybe we're hurting inside. And one of the things I've learned from being an elder over the years is everyone, amazingly, is hurting somewhere. Maybe some of us are here, small, some of them big, but we all got hurts. It may be hidden that people can't see it. Maybe we got a physical hurt this morning, constant pain, and we don't want to gripe about it. Maybe we here this morning with emotional hurts. Maybe a brother or sister in the church has hurt us. Family, friends, we do it so easily. Maybe it's a secret regret. I should have done something. Maybe it's a fear that you're scared to death of. Maybe you're worried sick. Maybe it's made you depressed. Or maybe you've got a relational hurt. Maybe we got financial hurts. And I think we all got those nowadays. My question to you is, what are you going to do with that hurt? Are you going to ignore it? Remember, it won't go away. God's telling you in His word this morning to stop procrastinating. Face your hurts. What are you pretending not to know? What are you going to do with your hurt? Hide it? Doesn't work. Are you worried? What are you worried about? Worry will not solve it. You need to do two things this morning. The first one is give your life over to Jesus. Let Him become your master. Let Him to take control. You need to go and say to Him, Lord, I need help. I don't understand all of it. I need you. I want you to be number one. I want you to heal my hurts and help me. Give me your life. Give your life to Christ right now. And if we have given our lives, maybe there are a lot of us that are in the church that have been walking a long time, and we had hurts and we gave them to the Lord. And the problem was like a preacher that was preaching a sermon, and he said to his church, I want you each to bring a rock to church next week and write on the rock your problem. And next week you bring it up to the pulpit and we're going to pray and do our thing there. And would you believe it? Everybody brought their rock the next week. And guess what? After the sermon was finished and I prayed that leave it, bring your burdens and cast your cares and all of that, they went and took their rocks back. Maybe we need to go to the Lord and say, Lord, those problems I gave you, I took back again. Please take them again. And maybe one of the things we forget about is we need spiritual support. We will not make it by ourselves. That is why we have church. It's the only reason we have a church. I can watch a sermon at home. A church is there for fellowship. I miss seeing the faces of the people I'm talking to. I miss the people's hugs and the greetings. I miss all the things because of social distancing. We need the support of other Christians that have experienced the same things. And if we are not an involved church member, if we're not totally committed, I encourage you this morning to make the church your home. Let it be your spiritual family. They want you here. Become a part. I urge you to commit yourself to the body. I urge you to get involved in a small group of people that care. You care, they care, you share what's going on in your life with other people and they share with you. You might even say, Mark, that's scary. I bet it is. But once you begin to do it, you'll never go back to the old way of life. Holding on to hurts. My prayer for each one of you is you will follow God's plan for dealing with hurts. Amen.